It's time to finally get back to work on dirt Reynolds. And at the end of this video, I actually have the biggest announcement since I started this channel 6 years ago. I do have a few projects going on in here. I'm in the middle of shooting the video for our portals. I'm in the middle of shooting the next video for Girth Brooks. I'm trying to make IFS flex as much as straight axle on Girth Brooks because that is gonna be my primary wheeler this summer. Sprinkled in with a bunch of Samurai trips this summer, of course. We do have one more week of work to do in the Samurai before it's ready for summer. We're putting in a new transfer case from Total Metal Innovations, excuse me. And I've got some ideas to rework our lockers to convert them into air lockers, and then this thing is gonna be ready to rock and roll. But I need this lift. Before I can install these sweet portal axles that we've been putting together into my TJ, we need to finish dirt Reynolds. And the good news is, I already filmed like most of a video last summer before we stopped and switched and started working on Yeti so that we had something for the Onyx Build Challenge. So now, let's get you up to speed. The last time I put hands on this truck, I realized very quickly that I didn't trust that it was gonna have enough oil capacity in the 203 section of this doubler case. So I decided that I'm gonna relocate the fill, since there's not really a fill in this current orientation. And we're just gonna locate a hole higher. I'm gonna drill and tap it. I'm still gonna have lots of space above it for a vent to make sure that oil isn't like just oozing out of this thing when we're on angles. But this should allow this 203 to have a much larger oil capacity, which is gonna keep it cooler, which is very nice, but also ensure that these upper bearings are actually going to get the oil they need to not fail. I was thinking about this transfer case all weekend. Did some wheeling, did a little bit of work, and now I have some ideas. The first thing I did, and what you just watched me do, is add this fill hole. This, I think, was the original fill hole. This plate came with our adapter. But the problem that I have is I don't think that that was high enough in order to, well, I don't know. I'm totally speculating here. There's a bearing that we hammered into place up there on this adapter. And my concern is that that bearing wouldn't be bathing in oil. It just occasionally gets slung up there. Whereas now this fill hole is high enough. I mean, there's no reason why I couldn't fill it this high. We still have a huge pocket of air up above, so we'll still be able to, it shouldn't push oil out, I don't think. But anyway, that bearing is definitely gonna be bathing in oil, and that makes me very happy. So now, I'm gonna play around with some options for shift linkage. I reserve the right to change my mind on this topic, so let me know in the comments, am I making a good call here? I am not doing a twin stick. And for those of you that don't know, a twin stick allows me to work the front and rear axle independently, meaning that if I'm in a situation where I need to get my front end over on an obstacle, I can do what's called a front dig, and I can basically put the rear in neutral and use the front tires to try to, you know, work the front end over. But my argument with a truck that I think is going to be somewhere around 9,000 pounds is that is just way too much stress and strain, even on a Super Duty Dana 60. So my gut tells me, Nate, you need to make this as reliable as possible. And in order to do that, I think that the front and rear axles always need to be working in tandem to shove all this weight down the trail and up and over obstacles. So if I'm in a situation where I need a front dig, in reality, what I should be doing is pulling cable, and I should be using the winch to move my front end over to get my, you know, self around a tree or whatever, and not do front digs. There's 4 low, there's neutral, there's 2 high, and there is 4 high. This actually shifts super smooth. I mean, it's probably the smoothest shifting gear-driven case I have ever seen. The guy that I bought this from had it in like a Ford van, and he went through the whole thing, and he had told me he did some stuff to make it like shift smooth, and he rebuilt the case and whatnot. And I would say this confirms it. I mean, we're not having to spin this at all in order to get it in and out of any gear. So I wanted to keep it simple. We're not gonna twin stick it. I don't see myself doing front digs with this build for a number of reasons. One, it's a lot of weight on the front axle. It's very highly likely that trying to do front digs in something this heavy is going to break that Dana 60. So for the simplicity and the fact that I was able to get linkage in here in just a couple hours of work, we're just running what came with this. I don't know if it's gonna fit through the floor yet. I mean, we're gonna be cutting a hole, but I'm looking at about where the shift linkage for the T-case was before, and we're not too far off. So who knows? Once we lower this, I'll be able to predict that. But right now, what I'd like to do is I need to get started on this cross member so we can set a height for this whole assembly.
This is kind of a big moment. It's a really big step in the right direction whenever you can make it to where your drivetrain is not sitting on either a jack or from a cherry picker, and it's going to be under its own weight. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. I want this to be high clearance. I need to build a way to mount this transfer case system into the truck, and I'm very eager to not have to support so much of the truck with jacks and jack stands and stuff.
Now that we have this mounted, clearance got better. Check out that belly, by the way. That transfer case and transmission are way up there, which is killer. So we've officially flat bodied this. However, we are still hitting right there. And I did have a bunch of comments in the last video that apparently you can trim this top part off. And man, it looks like if I trim this top part off, and then maybe if I just massage this with a hammer a little bit, you know, originally I was gonna cut that out because we have so much space under the seat. But if I could just massage that with a hammer, trim the top of the T-case off, we might be sitting pretty with this whole situation here. So, in any case, I feel like I have enough information to continue to build out this, this mount for our transmission in the direction that I am currently headed.
We're going to double team a few different things here. I'm going to start locating this transfer case and massaging things to fit, and Nick is going to start putting in this rear axle, because both things do need to coincide fairly optimally, and I'm very curious on how I'm going to be able to do this rear drive shaft. It's not as simple as just putting a one piece or a two piece in. Some of the angles, if we're going to go two piece, are pretty important, so there's a lot of things up in the air here as far as how all of this is actually going to mesh together.
I cut a pretty decent chunk off. I don't think it's gonna, you know, I still need to move the floor, but I can move the floor less now. Yeah, now that you got the rear end in, I can look at the drive shaft. That's a long one piece though, isn't it? Yeah. I don't think that's gonna work. I think it's gonna have to be a two piece, which is complicated because this is pretty high. So these top two pieces it's definitely gonna slant down to that cross member. And then, yeah, so it'll just be like a $2,000 rear drive shaft, no big deal. That's like as long as I am. The front ones will be long too.
I've built tons and tons of custom brackets and ways to hang transmissions and transfer cases, and one thing that I like to do with all of them is to try to use like a very common universal like rubber bushing or something as the base of it. So I've bought like 7 or 8 of these very common transmission rubber mounts, and I want to somehow apply 2 of those into this project. So Right now, I can only visualize one of these mounts, and that's going to come off the back of the transfer case. And the good news is this is going to get like everything hung and up in the air, so I can then figure out where I'm going to mount the second one. And if we were doing a small, lightweight truck that doesn't have a whole lot of power, we would just use one mount. We'd just do one mount on the transfer case. We'd probably be just fine. But because this drivetrain weighs so much, engine, transmission, and both transfer cases, and there's going to be so much torque, it's going to be very important for me to make two mounts. I think we're going to do one off the transfer case and one off of the transmission, but in either case, I want to make it to where one is basically on one side of the vehicle and one is on the other side, so that I could help reduce the amount of load from things twisting and untwisting as I'm driving down the trail. So again, I don't fully have this worked out in my head yet, but I know that I can work with what I can see and then figure it out from there. So what I can see is a mount off the back of this T-case so that we can hang the weight off of it and then start to look for a place to build another mount off of. This funky looking spring I got for $40. I got the whole set of springs from a 2016 Dodge Ram for 40 bucks. This is a factory spring. This is a factory rear spring. And I haven't seen a spring like this. This is really, really neat to me. It's clearly a progressive spring rate, which is why I'm so attracted to it. And I talked to my buddy Brock, who has like a 2016 Ram or something like that, 2500 Cummins. And he was saying his truck rides great unloaded, it rides great loaded. It's just, they've definitely got the spring rate figured out. I figure that with all the tooling and stuff in the bed of this and like a full tank of fuel, the back of this truck's probably gonna weigh very similar to a modern Dodge Ram. So that's why I was very enticed by these. The beauty of it is if it does sag a little bit, like if I decide I need it to be a little bit higher, getting a lift spring is easy. There's multiple companies that make them. However, packaging is not. The bottom of this is humongous. And the top goes up to a little curly Q, but neither one will fit in like one of these normal coil buckets. It just does not fit in there. So I've got a bunch of random stuff from Barnes that I'm gonna play with on the side of this frame, and I'm gonna try to come up with some kind of a plan to make this fit in there. That was the last thing that I shot before I realized how screwed I was. I shot that, I went and took lunch, and while I was at lunch, I started to add up the amount of weeks we had left, and then I started to estimate each section of the truck in order for me to do it right, how long would it take me to do it? And it was not gonna happen. I could have cobbled something together, but the truck deserves better than that, and I'm not gonna show up with something that's not safe and something that's not dependable to a competition. So I called the marketing director of Onyx, let him know what was going on, told him I'm more than willing to drop out of this and give them their money back if they needed to, because I can't build something that is trash or unsafe just to be able to do this. And they're like, no, we want you to be a part of this. They were very encouraging. And so I said, well, I could build something else that's gonna be faster to build. So that's why I'd already bought that Land Rover. It just fell into my lap like a month and a half before. And I was like, you know what? Even though this needs Land Cruiser 80 axles, 3 links front and rear, a turbo diesel swap, and like, manual steering and all this other stuff, it still seemed way more realistic to do inside of a 5-week timeline. So that's exactly what we did. And that was way more practical than to completely finish and like work through the issues
of building a 9,000 pound dually rock crawler to go to take to a competition. But now that you're up to speed, this is where I would like your help, and I'd like to make a giant announcement. We are officially opening an off-road shop. So for those of you that have been asking me over the last 6 years, like, hey, will you work on my truck? The answer is yes, very soon. I never wanted to do it at my house. I don't want to have customer vehicles on my private property, but we have been looking at commercial spaces, and we're going to finally make this happen. But I would like to try to get this as far as possible before we made this happen, because I'm going to be busy building customers' trucks. And the whole concept is we get to build cool stuff for other people. I hopefully will be able to use that to hire more people to get more help. And then we can have projects come through faster, build bigger and cooler projects, and then I'll just have my private fleet, of course. And this is where Dirt Reynolds is extremely important, because I want to be full service in the fact that we can go do mobile repair as well. So this truck is our mobile repair truck. And I know I've kind of alluded to that in the past, but that's been the plan. Once we decided to turn it into Dirt Reynolds and it no longer be just like the low buck diesel truck, that's when it was like, I have this vision of a sweet dually wheeling repair truck that's got a bed full of like a real welder and, you know, a generator and all this stuff, so that we can go way up in the Cascade Mountains and we can repair people, or we can drag them home, drag them back to our shop. And if they want to do upgrades while they're in there, we can do upgrades. But that is my vision of where this channel is going. That's my vision of where I want to go. And I want to turn this YouTube thing, well, we'll still do videos in here. But the bulk of the stuff, I want to be with a bunch of other fun people in a shop setting, and we get to just build cool stuff for customers. So that's the plan. And here, I'm gonna set this on a tripod, and then we'll talk about where I could use a little help. I could use a little advice and insight and opinions. So blow up this comment section. I have a lot of things I want your opinions on. One, if you already own a service truck business or something like that, and you have some words of wisdom, let me know in the comments. I have zero plans to make this like have a big boom in the bed and have it be a wrecker. This is not gonna be a wrecker. This is gonna be a recovery truck and a service truck that is made to go on nasty trails and stuff to fix people. So if anything, business oriented or licensing wise, anything you recommend, please let me know. But I also could use a little bit of opinion. So I'm considering doing 4-corner airbags. I might be overcomplicating something that could be very simple. Right now, the plan was just to put coils on all 4 corners, and that would probably be fine. But I see a lot of value in airbags, and it's not that much more money to do air. So not only do we have the like ride quality of air, but being able to like dump all the air. If this thing's gonna be 9,000 pounds, it's gonna be full of tools and stuff. If I'm on something off camber and it's leaning real bad, being able to dump a ton of air into that low side and drop all the air out of the high side to level it back out is gonna be so nice. So I like that. Of course, there's also the ability to increase the height when you need it. So if I belly out at normal ride height, to be able to dump as much air as I can into all 4 bags, get a few, 2, 3, 4 more inches of lift, so I can stuck myself and go forward and then dump it back out when I get over the obstacle. There's a lot of value there too. And then of course, even just hooking up a trailer, you can back up, dump the air out of the rear bags, back up to your trailer and then pump air in it and just hook that trailer. Really, really cool. And because this is a big heavy duty Cummins powered truck, I want to be able to tow with it. I want to be able to do everything with it. So curious on if you think that airbags are going to be too much or too unreliable. I've played with them in the past and I've really liked them, but for something like this, maybe there's something I'm not seeing. I'd really like your perspective. Also, if you work for a diesel performance company and you want to work with us, I'm really interested in doing a 12 valve P-pump swap in this. I've owned a few 12 valves over the years. I love 12 valve reliability and simplicity. And I think that it would make this swap just super simple. And then also if you've got injectors and if we could just turn it up just a touch, then that goes to transmission. If you work for a performance transmission shop or anything like that, what I'm thinking about doing with this and what I would like your advice on is Is there a performance transmission that's not for drag racing and stuff, but would be really good for what we're gonna do with this truck? That's something that's gonna be heavy duty and be able to handle heat and stuff from low speed crawling and whatnot. And do you think that a reverse manual valve body type of setup would be nice for this? Because I did find like a shifter online for this transmission, and I think it would be pretty sweet to be able to just manually go first through fourth and reverse instead of having to rely on a computer to do all that for me. I like the idea of selecting the gear that I want to be in. So reach out for any of those things, or if you have any advice, let me know on that too. I think that this is going to be a super sick truck when it's all said and done. And this is going to be kind of the cornerstone of our business. I mean, the bulk of our work is going to take place in this commercial space, which I don't know where it is yet. We've been shopping. But especially when the snow starts to fall, people slide off mountains, all kinds of stuff. I want to set this up with multiple winches. I want to set this up in a way that we can go up into the mountains, we can rescue people, and if they need the work done, we can throw them on a trailer, zip them back to the shop. And I think that that would be really fun stuff to film and share with you guys. So wish me luck in this new endeavor. We're not there yet. I want to get a few things wrapped up here first, but we are actively moving that direction. So more to come. There's going to be a lot of video content on a lot of different projects over the next couple months. And then hopefully by the end of the summer, we're going to be able to put a bow on some of these personal projects and actually have them 100% done. And then we can get to focusing on the next chapter of my life. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all your support. And we'll see you on the next one.